Thanks for joining me today, Jess, on the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. Can you start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Jess Nalu, aka the Vulva Lady, and I'm leading a vulva revolution or Vulvalution, and by way of a 1 million vulva art project where women are sharing their vulvas and empowering themselves and each other to normalize what the body looks like and how sacred each one of us are, and that we don't have to look like the porn industry states, and that everyone is beautiful in their own unique flower-esque vulva.
Yeah, so that's fascinating. How is this project coming together and what motivated it?
That's a great question. So it's funny. So I was in this course with one of my mentors around like a pussy reclamation, and one of the assignments was do something out of your comfort zone. And I pretty much live my life out of my comfort zone. So I woke up to a dream like to do this project, and I was like, no way, like no fucking way. Can I swear on here?
You can.
Okay. I was like I cannot do this. And then I just like sat with it and I talked to my little pod that I had, and I asked them like, what do you think? Like, what do you think about this? And every single one of them was like, you have to do this. And so it started with my little pod. And then I put on the top of my paper, my vision is greater than my fear. And I started reaching out to the women in the container, and everyone said yes, except for 2 women out of the 40 something that I asked. So I said, clearly, this is what is needed. And honestly, in my own journey of taking my own photo, because I'm not someone that's out there, sending my vulva to everybody. So I had to go through my own process of like all of the narratives that we've been conditioned to believe about our bodies. And I've had 2 children, and I was like judging myself and like, oh, like what if, all of the things, right? All of the shame, judgment, and nonsense. And it was cool because I could walk myself through what wasn't true for me and what was. And then literally the next day, another goddess had the same experience. And I was like, oh, I've got you. I've just gone through this process. And I supported her through it. And it just was shown to me that when women stop having to hide that most sacred part of ourselves, but we still can be anonymous, because it's all anonymous, and but standing in sisterhood and like just being like, here I am, you have nothing that like you can take from me anymore. Like, I'm visible, I'm seen, I'm not hiding away anymore. I'm still safe in the anonymity and sisterhood, but here the fuck I am. So watch out,
Mm.
world. And just the things that women were manifesting as a result of owning their power, of like standing and being seen. Like, women that had never looked at their vulvas are on this blanket that I made called Wrapped in Pussy, and it's going to lead. And then, so it just started as a like little tiny project that I was going to do as a gift for the woman that led the, my mentor that led the course that I was in. And then it just like I kept dreaming up more and more. And then I got the vision to be like leading this as a movement, as a 1 million vulva art movement. And it just kind of kept evolving from there. So like, I know that's a lot, but it's just really powerful. And the things that women were like manifesting as a result of like standing in their power was so beautiful. Like, one woman like manifested her soulmate and the house that she'd been searching for in Hawaii for like years. Like, it all happened super fast, because that's how powerful we are when we step into our femininity, into our vulva power.
And is that just through taking a photo of your vulva and sharing it? Or is there a whole bunch of other stuff that you do with them?
It's a whole process, right? So I was coaching the women throughout it, because I think, you can just take a picture and send it, and that is powerful in and of itself. But I think with the intention and the vision and the wisdom that was associated with it, I think it was about the intention more than just the picture, right? It's like what we were really standing for. The picture is symbolic of the greater vision, of the powerful message that we're here to create and to rise as divine feminine in this planet, and at the same time without emasculating men, because if we keep doing that, it's never going to win. So here we are to rise together as divine feminine and masculine. So
Mm. I'm definitely going to get you to break down divine feminine and masculine in a minute, but with your vulva art project, so you've got a blanket, I can see it in the background there. So you're adding pictures to it, or is that it?
this is just phase one, and I have
Okay.
a lot more to go, and lots of other things coming with the 1 million vulva art movement. But essentially, with the 1 million vulva art movement, I'm going to collect 1 million pictures plus,
How many have
And
you got so far?
so far I have about 100. So, and now, but I haven't really like, I'm just getting started. This is very fresh. So I know it's just going to take off and it's going to be beautiful. Um, so, but I want to like take over a museum. That's my big vision. And so that when a woman walks into that museum, she can see herself in another woman and feel like, you know what, I'm beautiful. Because there have been many times my girlfriends and I have been talking and like, oh, well, oh, well, what if it's like this? And like all of the things that we're taught, like without even realizing it. And there were times at my house, like we had a ladies' night and we just naturally like just were like doing a vulva show and tell because we're like, well, what do you look like? What do you look like? And it was very innocent and like just being like, oh, we're all beautiful. And so this was already being birthed way before it was birthed. You know what I mean? Like it was like as it was always meant for me. And I just had to like get ready and be in alignment. And now it's being birthed literally.
So you want the 1 million vulva images displayed somewhere? Like, do you know what it's going to look like?
I have some ideas, but we'll keep it like a surprise.
Yeah. So, well, let's just talk a little bit about, yeah, the way it looks, because some people think it should look a certain way. So can you, yeah, talk a bit about your experience and your knowledge around working with women and the shame that they feel around how certain things look a certain way all over their body, but yeah, with their genitals.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like some women have more inner labia, some have outer, like bigger outer labia. Some women have hair, some women don't have hair. So there's like this idea, like, oh, it has to be super tiny and like whitewashed, like some porn stars like will bleach their vulva. And it was really important to me to have diversity. So I have women of color on here of all different ethnicities, Asian, Black, Indigenous, and so on. And I'm Native American as well. So I definitely feel like that was important to me to have like that ethnic diversity, even though I'm white appearing, there's that indigenous blood, right? So so just showing women like, look, it doesn't have to be this way. Like if you look back, I know that those who listening on the, can't see it, but like there's some women that have like different things and like the labia here is like more wavy and then this one's really tiny and like just different colors, shapes, and sizes. And to realize, look, no flower looks the same and no one's judging the flower. They're just like, wow, what a beautiful flower. And what if we could just look at our vulvas and other vulvas and just be like, wow, how beautiful and different. Like I feel like every single woman on here is beautiful and each one looks different. And it's so amazing to see the diversity that exists in our world. And it's just like, I'm just so honored and I don't take it lightly that women have entrusted me with the most sacred part of themselves and to just be the leaders of this movement and being like, look, I'm willing to risk being seen to help other people. There are 2 women on here that are virgins that up until this project did not look at their body. They were that disconnected. And this was a beautiful moment to reconnect. And that leads into like, there was a woman in my building and she's full of plastic surgery and she's never like explored her own body. Like she's just cutting herself up. So one of the visions of the project is to educate and raise awareness so we quit doing labioplasty and like cutting our vulvas and like hurting ourselves and potentially like educating and stopping genital mutilation in the countries that still practice that. So yeah, it's like raising education and awareness and just being like, look, connect with her, like talk to her, see her. She's like in her 50s, has had a child and has never self-pleasured. And I'm like, what? Like you're missing out. Like that's an anti-aging thing. Like you don't need to be doing all this surgery. Just play with yourself.
Can you talk a little bit about the labioplasty that happens? What do you know about that?
I haven't done extensive research on it, but I know like certain women after they have children, like things change and get a little looser. So they'll like, try to like tighten it up or sew it up or cut it up, or if they feel like their labia are too big and meaty, so to speak, they'll cut it up and like make it smaller. And it was interesting in this project, something that I learned is like there's like when you have children in the vaginal opening, like you'll see like these like little pieces of skin and it's actually the hymen that comes out when you birth. And so you can kind of see that. And I know like it was cool to see other women have that because I was like, am I broken? Like, what's wrong with me? And one of the women on here was a gynecologist and we were like on Zoom and I was like, look at this, like, what's up with this? And like, just really being vulnerable and just being like, and she's like, oh, that's your hymen. And it was like, as much as I've like learned, I still continue to learn because I feel like we're always like, there's always more, right? And so that was very fascinating. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. I was just like, oh, maybe it's something got torn when I was giving birth. So it's just like, it's discovery, right? Like I'm learning more, these women are learning more, and like we're all just like on a journey of like discovering our bodies because we haven't been taught to know about our bodies. Like we get some lame ass sex ed in school, and most parents aren't talking to their children about their bodies. Most men and women, some of them don't, some women don't know about the clitoris. Like they don't know where it's at, they don't know what it is. And even I felt up until probably like a year ago silly saying vulva because we're called the vagina, but that's actually not correct, And so I had to come to peace with the vulva. Like even though I do the work around the vulva, like saying it, I felt like, oh, this is weird, right? So it's just
Mm,
like reprogramming all the false narratives that we've been taught, from the way it
mm.
looks to the way we talk about it to the way we connect to it. And yeah.
Well, I remember this story. I think it was told to me by a pharmacist and an older lady who was like, I took that medication, but I feel so sick. And it took them a while to work it out. But she always said things like down there, would never say vulva or vagina or anything like that. So this is an older lady, and it turns out, Pedsaries are like the tablets that get inserted into the vagina for treatment of various things. Um, she swallowed it. She didn't realize a pessary meant, I mean, not many people know this, that a pessary was to be inserted into the vagina. But it was just, she obviously felt awkward, and there was a lack of communication with the doctor, and she took her medication the wrong way. And that's why she felt so sick, because she swallowed it instead of inserting it.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Mm. And what are your thoughts about how we should teach our kids to use the proper names? Because I've also heard a really horrible story. It was just told to me. I won't go into too much detail about it, but it was published in the newspaper about how this kid in their family, the penises were called the frog. And so it, and within the family, they understood that, but then there was some sort of game, and the wrong thing was said. It was like beat the frog, and this poor child got again, I'm not clear 100% on the details, but because of using the wrong terminology, because there's shame around saying penis, vagina, or vulva, or anything around genitalia, this poor kid was hospitalized because of the injury that was caused.
Wow.
So what are your
Wow.
thoughts about how we should communicate this with kids? And
Yeah, it's
naturally,
very,
we'll explore.
yeah, I definitely have, I have two children of my own, and we name things as they are. Um, it was funny because when I had this project in my house, I was like, am I being a bad mother? Like, what's happening here? And if my children, I'm like, look, this is sacred. This is art. This is the body. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just who we are as human beings. And I think it's important to just name it as it is. And I think because there is a tendency for sexual abuse to occur in childhood, when we teach children the proper names of their parts, of their vulva, of their vagina, of their penis, it's important. And to also have those conversations of like what, like without shaming, but hey, this is your beautiful body part. It's so for you, it's not for anyone else. And to talk about it in a way to let them create safety and educate them, like it's not for other people to touch too, because I have been sexually abused and so many women have been sexually abused. And it just, when we don't educate our children and talk about it, then it just keeps the cycle going. And so for me, it was really important to educate my children. Like, look, this happened to me when I was little. And like the way we avoid this is having safe boundaries and having safe conversation and just being very transparent about it and normalizing nudity so that it's not this taboo thing and be like, oh my goodness, you can't see me naked. My grandmother was very free spirited and she was like Cherokee, like goddess, and she didn't mind being naked. Whereas my mother was very like, oh my gosh, don't look at me. And I'm like, why? We're both girls. Like, I don't understand. And so I think, having lived in Hawaii, there was like a naked beach and it was just like, it was very free. So I know I'm going off on tangents, but I think the main thing is just, to answer the question directly is to really just have the proper names and talk about it in a way that they can understand, and not make it some like, oh, you're Fanny, or you're, your kitty cat, or your hoo-ha, or whatever. It's like, it's a vulva. It's a, it's a penis. Doesn't have
Mm.
to be. And I think that stems from other people's own insecurities and discomfort with it, because I know that I'm going to get backlash at some point about this, right? Because there's so much shame. You can't even send an email with the words in it. You can't do a Facebook ad with the vulva in it. I wasn't even sure if anyone was going to print this blanket. Actually, I called them. I was like, can I print this? Because we're so censored and shamed. And it's like, if we would stop doing that, I think that rape would decrease, and like everything would shift, because when something's taboo, it's more desirable, right? So if we normalize naked, if we make it sacred as well, and just like communicate about it, I think that the dysfunction will lessen just as a result. Because when I was living in Hawaii, where there was a naked beach, nobody was being weird. It was just free, like children. There was like the innocence of it. And I feel like if we would bring the innocence back to it, then I don't know. I feel like it could change the world. And maybe
Mm.
that's a bit like fairy-esque, but I really do feel like if there's not such negative shame and repression, people aren't going to rebel against. So it's
Mm.
like, just bring back the sacredness.
How old are your kids?
7 and almost 14.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
What do they think of your vulva art project?
So my 7-year-old is sweet, right? He's like, oh wow, mom, this is beautiful. At first he was kind of freaked out, but he's more like in the place of like influence, I think, at this age, and just being like, oh, like the innocence, like, right? He's still innocent. So it's like, oh, I see, it's just beautiful. And now he like doesn't notice it. Like it just has become like, oh, this is what mom does. Now my 14-year-old is like embarrassed, right? It's the weird age of puberty. His friend came over the other day, and he's like, take it down, mom. I'm like, no, if I take it down, I am letting the world and the patriarchy and all of that shit that has shamed us, and why I'm doing this fucking project, win. If your friend doesn't want to see it, he doesn't need to look at it, and he doesn't need to like be near it. But I will not take it down. And I thought about it, and I was like, if I take that down, what am I saying to the universe?
Mm.
I'm not willing to do that. And so now his friend has been talking about it at summer camp, and my son's embarrassed. And I'm like, no, don't be embarrassed. Stand up and be like, yes, my mom is leading a movement because she's here to help women heal and help the world heal. And don't be ashamed of that, because it's not for the faint of heart, but I'm willing to take it on because I truly believe there's magic there.
Mm. Do people look at that and go, what is this? Like they have no idea what they're looking at?
I don't know, because like I haven't shown it to a ton of people yet, but what was your first reaction when you saw it?
Well, because I knew who I was talking to. I'm like, oh yeah, their vulva's in the background.
But if you didn't know, do you think you could tell?
They would actually, they kind of look like iris flowers.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And so,
I know my daughter will look at things and she's like, that looks like a vagina. Well, she calls it a vagina, but yeah, a vulva.
how old is your daughter?
She is 6.5.
Okay. And are you having conversations with her around like naming her parts and just feeling like safe in her body?
Yeah. Well, I guess I was trained as an osteo, and so they're all anatomical parts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that there's a point there too, and not making just medicalized as well, like letting her know how sacred and powerful and beautiful it is, right?
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sometimes it can go like the pendulum can swing really far. So we either medicalize it or we sexualize it. And so what I really want to do is find that middle ground where it's a sacred body part. Yes, it's sexual, and yes, it's medical and anatomical, and like it's not medical, but you know what I'm saying? Like there are medical things that come to it. And so I think coming to a place of the holistic perspective on it, like it is like where babies are born, where creativity is birthed energetically, like where we manifest. It's the money center. It's the like birth center of not only our babies, but like of our like lives and our money. Like every woman that I work with, she either doubles or triples her income, and that's not something like I was offering. It was like I was noticing it. Like every time I work with somebody, they're like doubling and tripling their income, and I'm like, why? And then I was like, oh, because that's the creative, like
The sacral chakra.
exactly. So it's the creative center, and so it was really fascinating because and I'm not like making that claim that I do that, and it just was like I'm just sharing that as relativity of like
Mm.
sacredness of it. And I think when there's been trauma or sexual abuse, we can either disassociate and we can make it become either like we don't connect to it at all, or we can get really medical about it, or we can get really sexual. I know I went through a phase in my youth where I was like trying to reclaim my sexuality. So I was like really like exploring my sexuality. And and I feel like I was a bit, and it was younger, like my younger, like teen years. And I feel like maybe I wasn't ready for that, because it is such a powerful thing. Like when you have sex with somebody, you're changing energy. It's like there's a lot going on. So um, that's why I say when you bring the sacredness back to it, and like let our daughters know like how beautiful and powerful it is, and that it's not to be just given away, or to get a guy to like us, or to prove something. It's like to find what feels true to you, like tune into your heart, to your body. And like as Mama Gina says, she's one of my mentors, like tune into your pussy, and like she will listen to you and guide you. Like I don't know if you've had the experience where you've been with like the wrong lover and you literally can't get wet. It's like she's telling you that's not the right motherfucker. Like she's warning you. I'm like, oh, if I would have listened, I would have avoided a lot of pain. Like, why did I not listen to her? Right? Like we know it. Like we can feel it. And so, yeah.
So I know a few women in the feminine embodiment space, and they use the word pussy. Can you talk about that? Because a lot of people would think that that's maybe a bit of a derogatory term.
Yes. So there's a book called Posterior Reclamation, and I'm all about like women rising up together. So I'm happy to share like other women that are leading this movement together, because right, we need each other. So Mama Gina, Regina Thomas-Shower wrote that book, Posterior Reclamation. And I'll tell you what, the first time I heard that word, I was so like, oh, I can't say that. Like it was very triggering for me. So I read the book and it was like, oh, okay, I get what she's trying to say. Like we get to reclaim the word. We get to redefine what pussy means. And so now, as I've been in that container with all the women like using it in such a powerful and positive and empowering way, now I have a new relationship to it. But before I was like, ah, like it really, like it was offensive. And so I think everybody that might have a trigger around that word, read that book. And even if it takes a minute, like read the book again, and like just like touch base with yourself and feel like, okay, why is this triggering me?
Yeah.
And like, so yeah, I think it's really powerful when we get to claim what feels true to us. Like even when people are like, don't be a pussy. Well, guess what? Pussies are really fucking strong, because we give birth and we bleed every month and we don't die. So it's like, I'm not about emasculating, but if we're going to use those words about genitalia, it would be like, don't be balls. Because if you get hit in the balls, you're down for the count, right? So so it's just about taking our power back and just being like, we get to use that word in a beautiful way and of a reclamation. So that's, I think
All in
that's
the reframing, right?
framing. Yeah. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah. So you do mention that you work with people one-on-one. Like, do you work in person? Do you do work internally with people? Who comes to you, and what's going on for them in their mind and in their body for them to approach and work with someone like you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've worked with all different types of people. So I've yet to work, I do in person in the way of retreats, but one-on-one work, it's been via Zoom, because I've lived in Hawaii. So it was a little bit hard to access people. So I've had clients around the world. And so we do Zoom sessions and we go into a mind, body, spirit approach. So we look at like the beliefs around their bodies, and then we look at how they're relating to their body. Are you self-pleasuring? And that doesn't just mean masturbating. Like, are you loving yourself? Are you taking baths? Are you like rubbing your skin? Like, how are you treating you? Like, if you want somebody to treat you well, look back inside. If you're not treating you well, how can you expect your lover to do that? Like, one of my most recent clients was in a really toxic relationship, and she didn't think that there was like an option to like have what she wanted, right? Because you can't have it all, like that narrative, that false narrative. Yeah. And so when we started working together, I was like, look, let's start at the foundation. Let's get your finances in order and see how you feel, because then you're going to feel like you're not relying on your husband, who was a narcissist. And then from there, she started like doing her self pleasure practice, and she went from being really having a hard time orgasming to squirting. So just from her own like discovery of her body, and like listening to her body and being true to herself and reclaiming her power. And from there, 9 months later, she served divorce papers to him. And I like, that was one of my favorite stories, because when I first started working with her, she didn't think that was ever going to be possible. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, and this is not like a testimony, like come be my client. It literally, like, it was so inspiring to me to watch what happens when a woman steps into her body, into her power, and loves herself. Because loving ourselves is a radical act, because we're having media and this and that and the other constantly telling us we're not enough, that we're not skinny enough, that we have cellulite, that we got like, and then with social media, like all the filters, it's like, fuck, you are beautiful with your flaws and all. And it's like, when we can help women reconnect to that, that's what lights me up, because I want every woman to feel beautiful, whether you're a size 0 or a size 20. Like, you are a goddess. Like, it doesn't matter the physical thing. Like, there's people that find that very attractive if you're overweight, and there's people that like really skinny people, and everything in between. And ultimately, it starts with loving yourself. And that's the basis of my work. It all starts within, because everything else is just a projection of what we're feeling.
What about your retreats? What would be involved with that?
Yeah, so our retreats are hopefully coming back soon with a lot of the COVID restrictions. But last time we got together, it was in Hawaii, and it was really a beautiful experience where we did different exercises to help the women feel more embodied, and to feel more confident, and to feel more free, and then to come together with other women to unite in sisterhood. Because so many times women don't have sisters as we age and get into adulthood, and it's more women against each other. And my vision is to bring women together where we're holding hands, linking arms, and rising higher together in sisterhood, because it's really healing and fun. It's super fun, right? And so, like, my vision is to be like clothing optional wherever we go, if that's comfortable, and it's not, of course, mandatory, but just really falling in love with our bodies and celebrating each other and celebrating life and sisterhood and fun, and then working on some strategy a little bit. But all of the strategy falls into place when we're in alignment with who we really are and like what we really want. But a lot of women know what they want. Like, if you ask most women, what do you want? They're like, I don't know, because we're so busy being mom or being this and being that. So it's like really bringing women back to like, what do you want, and how can we have the most fun doing it? And everything else falls into place.
Yeah, that's so true. Getting clear on what you want and what you desire, and those are the rights of the sacral chakra.
Yes, exactly.
So, sorry, my mind just went elsewhere. It went back to the very start. I don't know if you know, there is an art gallery in Tasmania. I can't quite remember the name. It might be called the Mona. It's like the modern art something. And I believe there's like a giant vagina that you can walk into.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's
So,
in Australia, you said?
yeah, in Tasmania, which is like the little state right down the bottom.
I love that. I know what's so funny is now I have all of these amazing people sending me vulva things, like people in Italy sending me something that's in the park, and then other people like sending me this. Even like someone was like sending me this video of a vulva cake that they made somewhere, and they had to like eat it without a fork. So I'm like, everybody's now thinking of me when they're thinking of vulvas, and I'm like, okay, I like it. This is great, and not in a weird, perverse way. And I think that's something that I bring to the table, because for me, my biggest thing is for women to feel safe, because we've had such trauma over the years. I want women to feel safe. So whether we're on Zoom or in person, safety is key, and like just really like communicating what every woman needs and desires. So yeah.
So what led you into working in this space? What inspired it? Was it your own journey with something?
Yeah, I think it just kind of, like I just kept helping all of my friends with it. And then I met a business coach, and she's like, why aren't you teaching this stuff? And I was like, well, I don't know. I never thought about it. I just love to help people do it. So I think that's kind of how it came to be. And then, of course, with my own journey, I believe we choose what we come in to learn. And if, at the age of 3, my spirit chose to have sexual abuse and violation, and then various things throughout my life. And I truly feel at the core of my being that all had to happen so that I could have a greater empathy and awareness and wisdom to hold such an epic container for women, because I've lived a lot. And so I understand a lot. It's like trying to like explain childbirth if you haven't done it. It's like, you can't. Like, if you've not felt the ring of fire, you are not going to be able to explain that. So, like, there's no fantasy that's going to get you there. So right? It's like, there's just no other, nothing. It's like, or if you haven't experienced death, you can't. I heard of the story, like there's a bereavement coach, and she was like trying to help people on death. I'm like, you have no fucking idea the guttural level of like, ugh, that happens when you experience death. How are you coaching people? It's just like a disconnect. So that leads me, like, I think that's what led me there, because I'm like, okay, how can I use all of this to better the world and not become a victim to the circumstance, right? Because a lot of it's easy to go into victim, like, oh, what did this happen for me? And da, 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 da. And I've had my moments of that, of course. And then I was like, wow, how amazing and how powerful that I had this gift. And I can see it as a gift, right? Everybody says like your mess becomes your message and all of these other like beautiful cliches. And I really do feel like there's a truth to that, because like I don't think I would have the awareness and the empathy that I do if I didn't experience so much.
So as you were going down your journey learning about this space, was it just you had interest and you were reading books and taking courses, or was it that you just had, you just had this intuition around it, like you were naturally helping your friends?
Yeah, it was just a natural intuition. And through my own exploration, I was very curious about sexuality growing up. And I think I probably would have been more so had I not been raised Christian. So I repressed a lot of it. And so as I was doing all of that programming, I was like doing my own journey and my like following my intuitive gifts, because that's one of my superpowers, right? Is the intuition. And then like just doing it with friends. And then, as time went, I got fascinated and I was reading books, and I did study psychology. So maybe there was something in there as well. Like in high school, I went to college and I was fascinated with psychology and understanding how we work and how our brains are. And like, so I feel like that's super fascinating. And I always want to keep learning. Like there's some ideas that I have about continuing education and like just learning more and more about all of this topic, right? Like I love that like orgasm, a lot of it occurs in the brain, and like people that are paralyzed can actually have an orgasm from different stimulation in different points in the body, that it doesn't have to be genital touch. So I'm fascinated by it. So it's like a combination of taking courses, my intuition, reading books, and just consuming it all. Like I don't watch TV. I'll go on like Gaia or go and read a book and like just learn and learn and learn. I'm just obsessed with like learning about this whole human experience.
So as you were learning more, is that when you started to heal the things that had happened in your past? Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that actually is what inspired me, is my own desire to heal, because I'm like, okay, why am I manifesting these situations in my life, like toxic relationships and people like mistreating me and like repeat offenders and different things like that. So I think the pain of like being violated numerous times, I was like, okay, like what's it going to take for me to have a life where I'm not experiencing this? And so like it started with like the psychology of trying to understand it, and then it morphed into like law of attraction and different things about the energetic world that I didn't know even existed. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I can shift this, and like I continue to do it, right? Like there's always layers. I don't want to portray myself as like a guru or someone that has it all figured out. I don't. I have figured out a lot, and I still have a lot to learn. And so I really want people to understand that like just because we all have gifts doesn't mean like that we don't still have struggles. And I want to normalize that, because I think the problem right now is everybody's acting like they have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I have some, and I have some gifts, and I'm happy to share them. But it's a work in progress, right? It's
Mm.
like really going through that journey of like healing myself. Like it's like I've been single for 7 years intentionally, because my last relationship was pretty intense, and it was like there was like threats on my life and different things like that, and I wasn't able to get protection because I was white and he was Hawaiian. And so there was like this yeah, there's a lot going into that. It's funny because as I'm saying it, I'm also like, holy shit, like I'm like speaking this aloud, the world's gonna hear it. And I'm like, but it's okay. Like it's okay to share our story, and it's okay,
Mm.
like we're safe. And to remind our nervous system we are safe and we can share this story, because I know that I'm not the only woman that's been in that situation
Mm.
where like, they're like, you go to the police and they're like, oh, just you have to wait till something happens. I'm like, okay, so wait till he actually kills me to get the restraining order. Awesome.
So
you
what
know?
sort of are you able to talk about like what things were being said to you?
And as far as like in that moment,
Yeah, like what were the what were the threats that were being said to you? Because there are a lot of women who are in these situations, and it's like they find it really hard to get out of it, or just this self-doubt of like, well, is this normal? Should I just stay here and should I just cop this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Only if
So
you're able to.
yeah, no, I'm happy to. So it was like telling me like different things. I'll share some of it, not everything I want to go into, but like saying like, oh, I was dreaming of getting meth and a gun last night and stabbing you in the stomach. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, and I'm like, and I remember like being vacuuming my floor as he was talking to me, and he had like this disconnected look on his face. And I was like, but why would you do that? I have a child. And like just trying to really stay calm and like navigate the situation, because it felt like I was scared. I was like, just
Mm.
keep vacuuming, keep vacuuming. And I feel like my grandparents that passed on and like all my spirit guides were like protecting me, because I just like stayed calm and like tried to speak to his rational mind, and eventually got him out of the house. But it was really scary. And then it's like, you know, you go to get help, and they're like, oh, well, unless he's done something, like we can't do anything to protect you. I'm like, okay, well, when I was younger, like I had a like distant family member like threaten and his wife, and she actually got a restraining order, but he broke the restraining order and he killed her and himself in
Oh,
front of
wow.
their child. So I think it's like, I don't know, like I think that there's
There's
so
something
much.
wrong with the system if we have to wait until something goes wrong. Like it's a very reactive approach.
It is. And it's like we need a better system to protect women. And I think we also need to have harsher punishment for terroristic threatening like that and different things like that, or rape. If you rape a woman, it should be death penalty, because guess what? If, or like, yeah, I have some morbid thoughts about that too, but I won't go there. But if there were stricter punishment, I think that people might think twice about it. But the sad reality is most rape goes unreported, because just like when you go to get help, they don't believe you or they criticize you, they shame you. So women just stay quiet.
Mm.
So part of my mission and vision is to educate men, because if we are always just on the um, other end trying to fix what's already happened, we're like running after. We're doing the same thing that the system is doing. But if we educate from the ground up, then we can affect change. If we teach young boys how to treat women and how to treat themselves so that they don't become violent and aggressive, where they feel like they have to do that, like to love themselves, right? Because if a man loved himself, he wouldn't need to rape. So if we get to the root of that, then we can change it. But if we're just doing, what's the word I'm looking for? But you know what I'm saying? Like if we're going after the problem, like going and I'm like blanking the word, but it's not never going to work like that. So when we emasculate the men, we're not doing anything different than what they're doing. So we have to like, unfortunately, I know it's but our souls chose to be women, right? So we have to like rise them up. And I always joke like, the universe gave me two boys so I wouldn't become a man-hating lesbian, because now I have like a duty and like an awareness of like, oh, I don't want to be a man-hater because that hurts my children. So how
Mm.
do I show up in the world and be an amazing mother for them so that they can be an amazing men in this world and change the patterns of what has been so violent toward not only women but to themselves as well, right? Because we're all one.
Mm. Can you share with us what divine feminine and divine masculine is?
Yeah, so like in my experience of that, like the divine feminine is like the highest truth of like feminine essence. It's like the goddess energy, the mother energy, the more yin, right? It's the yin
Yeah.
energy, like just that receptive energy. And we have both inside of each one of us, right? So and I think that's something we don't get taught. Like you have to be one or the other, but we each have divine masculine, feminine inside. And then the divine masculine is like like the king energy, the like protector, the beautiful like supporter energy. And like that's like really basic level, but just like that little dance of give and take, receive and give.
Mm. Oh my gosh, what else do you want to share with us?
I know there's so many things. I feel like I'm going on all these tangents because I love it. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you everything.
Yeah. Is there anything that I missed that you think that you need to share with us?
I think really important is for people to really like get in touch with their bodies, to get off your cell phones, to put down the social media, to stop looking at other people, and to find that love inside of yourself, and to really like reconnect who you are. Like if you would ask like most people, who are you? I don't. It's like somebody asked me the other day, and I was like, No, that's a really good question. I feel like, it's like sometimes I don't know who I am, right? I'm constantly evolving. And so it's like, if we take that time and that silence to really go within and figure out like what we desire, what like turns us on, what makes us feel happy, what brings us joy, like really get into that like beautiful space, like what a different world it would be. Like if we would normalize naked and sexuality and the sensuality and the beauty that happens when people come together with reverence for one another, the planet would change, because instead we're like letting violence be seen. So you can't see a nipple, but you can see someone getting murdered online. Like, what in the F is up with that? Like, I don't know about you, but I'd rather see somebody naked or having sex or whatever in some kind of realm of that that's so taboo than seeing someone murdered. But yet we're normalizing that. And we're like letting our children like play these violent video games, and yet we're like, don't look at a vulva. So like, what's up with that? Right?
Mm.
There, like that could be like a whole nother conversation. But like just to touch on that and to really look at where our values are. Like if you're a woman and you've yet to look at your vulva, like don't shame yourself for that. Go check her out. Like find the beauty in your body. And if you're a man, like love yourself too. Like it's not just for women. Like my next mission is going to do a project for men, because I think circumcision is like another form of genital mutilation. And that had I not moved to Hawaii, I wouldn't have known it was optional, because I grew up in the Midwest and I thought that's just what you did. And then I found out, oh my goodness, this is optional. And like there's 4,000 nerve endings on the tip of the penis. So when you cut the foreskin off, you're like hurting, like it just desensitizes it. So then I've been with both circumcised and uncircumcised men. And I'm going to say a really bold statement, but it's like, it's different. Like men that are cut are not as tuned into their bodies. It's like an energetic disconnect because they've had to, right? Because like it'd be like rubbing the tip of your finger for a really long time. You like have to disassociate or you're going to go mad because it's so sensitive, right? Or like rubbing your eyeball for a really long time, right? Something with a lot of nerve. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It gets irritated. And so I really want to raise awareness around that, because it doesn't need to be done. And everybody's like, oh, it's clean. And it's all in the name of religion. And all this goes back to the religious shaming so that they can have control over us. And it's like, if we were meant to be cut, and if religion is your reason, well, why would God make us that way? Right. So I'm not religious, like, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think if nature created us that way, it's meant to be there. We're not cutting off our like tip of our nose or something. So, I'm very passionate about the human body and just really like getting back in touch with the truth of it, and not all of these things that are like dogmatic or methods of methods of control and fear and all of that shit.
Mm. So where can people follow your work or the Vulva art project so they know when it's launching and they can have a look at everything?
Absolutely. So I'm the Vulva Lady, so VULVA, on Instagram and Facebook. And my email is info@thevulvalady.com. And if anyone desires to be a part of it, they just send us an email and we get the consent form over to them, and they can share their picture with us and they can be part of the liberation and the movement. And we're working on some fun things and some in-person gatherings so that we can get like professional photographers in and really make it beautiful. Right now, these have all been selfies because of COVID, when they've turned out really well. So it's awesome. But I want to take it to another level as well. And I've got some great things coming up. So I'm the Vulva Lady everywhere.